Right.
The other thing that is, of course, being talked about a great deal with what's happening right now has to do with women, of course, as voters. And you mentioned it when you both spoke earlier, but for some reason, I think there was always in America some idea that if there were a woman up there, that every woman would rush to her or away from her or whatever. And of course, both Clinton and Palin's being out there has proved what we always knew, who were working with women, is that they're very different, and they are drawn to different aspects of these people. But this thing with Palin particularly has been fascinating about how women have come to her or who has come to her. And I'm interested in your perception of that, about what, you mentioned some of it as when you were talking earlier about wronged women, wronged women, but there's a lot of conversation and question about what parts of her have been so appealing. And what do you think?
Well, she's certainly an image. I mean, she's been created as a brand. I mean, she's been created like almost an empty. She's Andy Warhol could not have done better. She is an empty soup can, and but she's got really stylish glasses. Her fashion sense is impeccable. And I think that she fits so nicely on the cover of People magazine. People, they don't have to change their vocabulary. Baby bump has been all over. It's Brad and Angie and Jen again, and the reality of her politics and the reality of her of her anti-scientific stance. I mean, I want to say her religious stance, but it isn't just her religious stance. I mean, you can hold two views, I think. You can have a religious view that goes one way and a scientific view that goes the other. But her investment in, there is no global warming, it's God's will, it's not man's doing, this is one of the most crucial issues of our time. And everybody is focused on the brand name of her glasses. And so I do think that in some ways, it's worse than with Hillary Clinton, who was derided for whether or not she wore a pantsuit or this or that. But it was, but you knew that Hillary Clinton had a core that was being, or Hillary Clinton put forward her issues, even through the attacks that she was sustaining. And I think Palin is riding on this. On the image alone, on the sheer advertising, the marketing, and again, I think all over my AOL account this morning, they were saying that she's simply not going to say anything that's not scripted. She's going to do very, very little. So we may never be able to open the soup can and find out that there's nothing in it.
Yeah, I think, sexism takes, and all bias of all kinds, every bias takes many different forms. One is lowering standards and one is raising standards. So I think that for Clinton they were raised, and for Palin they're lowered. And they're sexist in both cases. And part of me really feels for her, because to have 2 months to prepare to debate a guy who spent 37 years on foreign policy, I think to myself, John McCain is not your best friend, because he's putting you in this in this position. I think her feistiness and but I think that the basic, the nub, the core of her appeal is the superwoman. The women's movement has spent 35 years that I know of trying to get rid of superwoman because it's impossible to be superwoman. The whole idea is to change society to fit women, not to make women do 2 full-time jobs and so on. But that has been presented as possible in order to keep society from changing, and in order to not so you don't have to have childcare, you don't have to have changed job patterns, you don't have to, because all the onus is on the victim. You have to do 2 full-time jobs, which probably affects, really, really, certainly millions of women. And she makes it seem possible. So I think it's magnetic, certainly for men with whom she's more popular than with women, but also for some women to say, see, we can do it without changing society, we can still be loved by and approved of, we can still have male approval, and do it. Now, she can't do it either. I mean, she lives 800 miles away from her office. She's such an absentee governor that the state legislators wear buttons saying, "Where's Sarah?" She had to hire administrators in both of her jobs because she, partly out of lack of experience, but also just out of lack of time. I mean, the truth of the matter is nobody can be Superwoman, but to the degree that she's making it seem possible, easy, so everything is okay and you don't have to be disliked or make trouble or try to get policy change or any of that stuff, it's just all okay. I think that has a magnetism.